The Bible is the most read and most influential book in all of history. It is the basis for the largest religion on earth with over 2 billion followers. The Christian religion spread from the Middle East to Europe and now to every corner of the earth. Different interpretations of the words in the Bible have caused schisms and wars, and the basis of the Western moral code is based on its contents. Much of the history of the Bible is not supported by archaeological and textual evidence, but at the same time, much is. Even many biblical scholars consider parts of the Old Testament to be allegory, but the history told throughout the Bible is vitally important to understanding the teachings of Christianity. And in this video, I will tell the history told in the Bible as fact. To many Christians, the history of the Bible can be boring and too ancient to care about. I believe that the history and geography of the Bible is very interesting, and today I want to explain it in detail. Much of the history of the Bible is situated in a small region of the Middle East on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean called the Levant. More specifically, most of the Bible takes place inside the borders of the modern-day country of Israel and or Palestine. Of course, all history in the Bible happened 600 to 2,500 years before the Arab conquests and any controversy surrounding Palestine. Even though the actual area of the Bible takes place is very limited, many interactions take place between the Israelites and the states of the Middle East. Now, to start the history of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. These are the first words of the Bible in the first book, Genesis. It continues, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. Of course, the Bible starts with the creation story, where God creates the world in 7 days, and Adam and Eve allow sin to enter the world. Even within Christianity, there are differences between people taking Genesis word for word and others believing it is allegory. But all Christians can agree that God created everything in the universe. Geography-wise, it seems that the Garden of Eden is supposed to be somewhere in the Middle East, as the Tigris River is mentioned in Genesis. After the original creation, the Bible follows Adam's family line to Noah, who creates the ark and survives the famous flood. After the flood, we follow the family line again until Abraham. Many biblical scholars place Abraham's life to be somewhere around 2200 BC. Others point to around 1900 BC, but this map is from 2200 BC. At this point, Mesopotamian and Egyptian societies have existed in the Middle East for thousands of years. But the first Egyptian empire was formed 600 years before this map, and the first real empire in Mesopotamia, or about modern-day Iraq and Syria, was formed only 150 years ago, meaning that this map and the start of the Bible is extremely ancient. Abraham is born in Ur, which is possibly the most important city in the world at this point of history, and is the center of the Neo-Sumerian Empire, in purple. He eventually moves with his family to Haran, and is eventually called by God to live in the land of Canaan, or where modern-day Israel is. Canaan at this point has no real kingdoms and is only tribes. In Canaan, Abraham is promised a son, even though he's 100 years old at this point. Eventually, Abraham's wife, Sarah, gives birth to their son Isaac. Also during Abraham's life, God destroys the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, which are shown in pink. Mount Ararat is also shown in pink, which is likely where Noah's Ark was supposed to have landed. Isaac eventually has a son named Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons, which are considered the patriarchs of the 12 tribes of Israel. Eventually, he becomes an important official in Egypt and in charge of food stores. During a famine, his 11 brothers come to Egypt to find food, and they end up reuniting with Jacob. Because of Jacob's position in the Egyptian government, he allows his brothers to live in Egypt and starts off the next chapter of the Israelites' history. In Egypt, the lineage of Abraham and Jacob multiply in numbers, but their descendants also become a slave class to the Egyptians. Sometime around 1500 BC, Moses is born in Egypt and is supposed to be killed as a baby, but is instead found by the daughter of the pharaoh and raised in the Egyptian royal family. When Moses sees an Israelite being beaten by an Egyptian, he kills the Egyptian and flees to the countryside to escape the death penalty. At this point, God speaks to him through the burning bush and tells him to bring the Israelites back to the promised land in Canaan. During this time period, Canaan was nominally controlled by Egypt, like most of the Levant, but wasn't a core part of the Egyptian Empire. The most important empires during the Exodus, or the moving of the Israelites from Egypt to Israel, were the Egyptian Empire and the Kassite Babylonian Empire in Egypt and Iraq, respectively. Other states during this period were the city-states of Mycenaean Greece, Elam in modern-day Iran, the Mitanni, and the Hittites in modern-day Turkey. Moses begins the Exodus by telling the Pharaoh to let his people go. The Pharaoh of Egypt doesn't let the Israelites go until God sends 10 plagues to harass Egypt. The Israelites start in Abaris and travel to Succoth, and eventually they travel across the Red Sea during the splitting of the Red Sea by Moses. They continue through the Sinai Peninsula until they reach Mount Sinai in the southern Sinai Peninsula. This is where Moses receives the 10 Commandments from God. While Moses receives the commandments, the Israelites begin to worship an idol, and God punishes them. He does this by forcing them to wander in the Sinai for 40 years. After these 40 years, the Israelites are poised to conquer Canaan, but Moses dies before they can do so. In his place, Joshua, Moses' brother, leads the conquest of Canaan. In purple, you can see the path of conquest, with battles shown as red dots. Shown on the right is the aftermath of the conquest and the 12 tribes of Israel, with the numbers 1 and 2 on the map being the cities of Jerusalem and Jericho in the tribe of Benjamin. Eventually, the tribes of Israel want a king to lead them, and Saul is chosen by God around 1100 BC. On the left is Saul's kingdom and the important cities he controlled, including Jerusalem. This kingdom was fully located in the modern-day nation of Israel and or Palestine. During Saul's reign, he repeatedly dishonored God, and God's priest Samuel anoints David as king instead. Eventually, David becomes a king of Israel and expands its borders and unites the region of Israel in the north and Judah in the south. The United Kingdom under David spread from Egypt in the Sinai Peninsula, all throughout Israel, to Lebanon on the north coast, and Syria north inland. This kingdom and David existed around 1000 BC. After David, his son Solomon ruled the kingdom. After Solomon's rule, the kingdom split into Israel in the north and Judah in the south by 930 BC. Israel is centered around the city of Shechem and eventually the city of Samaria, where the Samaritans mentioned later in the New Testament are from. Judah is in the south, centered around Jerusalem, and has the first temple of Judaism, which was built by Solomon. During the late 800s BC, the Neo-Assyrian Empire, based out of modern-day northern Iraq and Syria, begins to expand throughout the Middle East. The Assyrians were known for their brutality and bad treatment of conquered peoples. In 722 BC, the Assyrian Empire, led by Sargon II, takes the capital of Israel, Samaria, and conquers the nation. Assyria also sieges Jerusalem, but Jerusalem holds out and Judah is spared conquest. During the time period before the Assyrian conquest and up until the end of the Old Testament, many different prophets are born and speak of prophecies that talk about Israel's future and the eventual birth of the Messiah, or Jesus. These include prophets like Elijah, Daniel, Jonah, Jeremiah, and Isaiah. By 612 BC, the Median Empire in modern-day Iran expands, and the Babylonians want independence from Assyria. This leads to the sack of Nineveh, the Assyrians' capital, and the fall of the Assyrian Empire. This power vacuum allows both the Median and Babylonian empires to expand. Eventually, the Babylonian Empire conquers both Israel and Judah, while destroying Jerusalem along with the First Temple in 587 BC. During this conquest, many Jewish leaders are forced to move to Babylon. In 600 BC, Cyrus was born in Persia, which was located in southeast modern-day Iran. Cyrus eventually becomes the king of both Persia and Media, which makes him possibly the most powerful man on earth. By 540 BC, Cyrus begins to conquer into modern-day Turkey and south into the Neo-Babylonian Empire. In 539 BC, Cyrus conquers Babylon and Jerusalem in the same year. After conquering Jerusalem, Cyrus, known as Cyrus the Great, makes the Edict of Cyrus, which allows the Jews living in Babylon to go back to Israel, and he even helps build the second temple in Jerusalem. By 500 BC, Empire Cyrus founded has been expanded by his successors and is the largest and most powerful empire in human history. The Persians, or Achaemenid Empire, rules the area of Israel and Judah until Alexander the Great defeated the Persians in 331 BC. During this time of Persian rule is where the Old Testament cuts off and the Bible skips time until slightly before the birth of Jesus and the beginning of the New Testament. As I stated, Alexander the Great is born in 350 BC, and by the time he is 25, he conquers the most powerful empire on earth and makes his own great empire. Alexander ends up dying in 323 BC, and his empire collapses as his generals fight for control. The most powerful of these dynasties end up being the Seleucids, based in modern-day Iran, and the Ptolemaic dynasty, based in modern-day Egypt. These empires last until the Romans conquered regions of them and conquered Judea in 63 BC. Regions of these empires were even conquered by Rome during Jesus' lifetime. The Roman Republic and eventually Roman Empire expanded from a small city-state on the Italian peninsula to the hegemon of the Mediterranean and the most powerful empire in Europe up to that point. By 200 BC, they had conquered the Italian peninsula. By 100 BC, they added on Spain and Greece, as well as much of Turkey and North Africa. Judea was conquered in 63 BC by Pompey, and Roman rule was solidified during Jesus' lifetime by Augustus Caesar. During the conquest of first Julius and then Augustus Caesar, Rome conquered France, Egypt, and the Levant where Judea is located. Jesus was born under the rule of Augustus Caesar on the left, and died under the rule of Tiberius on the right. Neither of these empires interacted with Jesus, though, as local rulers interacted with him instead. Quirinius was governor of Syria at Jesus' birth, and Herod was the king of Judea. Pontius Pilate ordered Jesus' crucifixion at the Pharisees' request, as he was the governor of Judea under Tiberius. Of course, BC means before Christ, and is what I've been using to state dates. The problem with this is that Herod died in 4 BC, making it unlikely that Jesus was actually born in 0 AD, because Herod was involved in Jesus' birth. Either way, Jesus was born around 0 AD in the town of Bethlehem, and was raised in the town of Nazareth. Both of these towns were in the Roman province of Judea, which was bordered by the Roman province of Syria and close to the Roman province of Egypt. Judea was also one of the closest provinces to the Romans' main rival, the Parthian Empire. This map shows Jesus' ministry throughout Judea. The numbers also cities or places where an important moment or miracle happened. They are not in chronological order, but are in geographical clusters. 1 is Bethlehem, where Jesus is born to Mary and Joseph. 2 is Bethany, where Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. 3 is Jerusalem, where Jesus performs miracles. Eventually, he enters the city on a donkey on Palm Sunday. A week later, he has a final supper for Passover with his disciples. He prays in Gethsemane and is crucified along with 2 criminals. In 4, Jesus heals a blind man at Jericho. At 5, Jesus appears to 2 disciples after his resurrection at Emmaus. 6 is where Jesus speaks to a Samaritan woman at the well in Sychar. 7 and 8 are possibly where Jesus casts out a demon from a man that worked at a graveyard. 9 is possibly where Jesus fed the 5,000, as well as where he healed a blind man and walks on water. 10 is the possible location of the Sermon on the Mount. 11 is Capernaum, where Jesus performs many miracles, including catching fish, which he uses to recruit his disciples. He also heals sick and blind and mute people in Capernaum. 12 shows where he heals sick in Gennesaret. 13 shows where Jesus heals a Canaanite woman in Tyre. And 14 is where Peter says that Jesus is Messiah in Caesarea Philippi. The map of Jerusalem on the left shows the last days of Jesus' life. The green dashes show Jesus' step from 1 at the Last Supper, then the garden, then being arrested and going to the temple. The purple line shows the path of the cross. Most biblical scholars say that Jesus was crucified in 30 BC. 3 days after his crucifixion, Jesus was resurrected. This moment, whether you're a Christian or not, has changed the course of history and has driven the religion and politics of Europe and surrounding areas for 2 millennia. After Jesus' death, he appeared to Mary Magdalene and his disciples. Then he continued his ministry for 40 days after his resurrection and eventually ascended to heaven. After his ascension, his disciples continued his ministry and spread Christianity to Jews and Gentiles in the Roman Empire, as well as Ethiopia, Armenia, Persia, and even India. The rest of the New Testament, after the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Acts, are mainly composed of letters, mostly written by Paul, to early Christian churches in most of the Greek-speaking part of the Roman Empire. Paul, originally named Saul, actually persecuted Christians, but was converted by God himself and changed the course of his life. After his interaction with God, Paul traveled all over the Roman Empire to spread the faith and wrote letters to the churches he met with after he left them. This map shows Paul's first journey, which started in Antioch in modern-day Turkey and went around southern Anatolia, which is what modern-day Turkey was called in ancient times. He then traveled to the island of Cyprus and back to Antioch. His second journey also started in Antioch. He traveled through Anatolia, then he traveled through Greece. After Greece, he traveled to Jerusalem and then back to Antioch. His third journey follows almost the same path as his second journey through Anatolia and Greece. Paul's fourth and final journey was to Rome. He went along southern Anatolia to Crete. He was then shipwrecked in Malta, but eventually he went to Rome, where he was arrested for being Christian and spreading Christianity. While in prison, he preached to those in Rome. After all the letters in the New Testament written by Paul, the Bible is finished off with the confusing book of Revelations. While in exile on the island of Pathos, John the Apostle, one of Jesus' disciples, received a vision of what is written in the book of Revelations from Jesus. The book of Revelations explains how the world will end before Jesus comes back a second time. The book ends with God recreating the earth and removing the separation between earth and heaven. A New Jerusalem is then constructed across entire continents. And that is the history and geography of the Bible. The story that has changed the course of history and will continue to inspire billions into the future.